Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to episode 3 of the RC10 Classic build video series. Took a little break. I've been busy, had a family vacation, and then my house was struck by lightning, which messed up a bunch of stuff, internet and all that, so I had a little bit of a break, but I haven't touched this thing. It's exactly like I left it in the last video. Another thing I was waiting on was this package from Boca Bearings. I decided that I will be doing bearings on this install in the event I decide to race this car, so, or drive it, whatever. So, hopefully they sent me the right thing. I ordered for the 6-gear transmission, 6-gear 10-scale buggy. I see some flanged bearings and stuff in there, so it's a nice little package. Gotta like Boca. Very cool. Alright, without further ado, now that's a pretty big change from the original. 48 pitch gears as opposed to 32 like in the old days. This little pin was kind of an MF'er to get in there, but this is what holds it into this plate, so fought that for a few minutes. Alright, so there's the plate halfway installed. They say to use some CA on this upper pivot, so I'm going to put some CA on there and then let it sit for a while, probably. Back in a few. Alright, so next up is install the bearings in these little guys. I don't know what size these screws are, but they are smaller than the tiniest standard I have. I have a wrench here I used on one of my helicopters. It says it's a .09. Seems to fit. Look how tiny that stuff is. Ridiculously small. These are actually the nightmarish part I remember about converting to bearings back in the day. These were a serious pain in the neck back in the day. I remember stripping these screws and like never got them out of there. I won't be taking these out. I'll tell you what, being in the crawler world, I don't miss building ball diffs at all. This little E-clip right here, this thing will focus. I'm not gonna lie, that thing was a bastard to get in there. It's recessed down in that bearing holder, and getting some on the outside of it, not easy. I used a pair of snap ring pliers. I was finally able to get it to go on there, but real pain in the rear. I couldn't imagine that for a first time builder. It's got these little foam guys here around the outdrives. It's supposed to keep dirt out, I guess. It says to hold it in place with a little dab of CA. Alright, well, there's the transmission complete. Seems like it has a lot of play. Put a washer underneath this E-clip right there to try and take some of that play, but but when I compare it to my old one, it's nearly identical, so either I did it wrong both times or it's supposed to be that way. You decide. Alright, time to mount the transmission on the chassis. These tubes are kind of a bastard to get in, so I'm using this little clamp here to... So anyway, I've been complaining about, just make this to focus, getting that E-clip on that shaft when it's recessed behind that bearing holder. So this is a pro tip from however many years ago. Not a pro tip for me, but it was from the racers at my local track. My job here I did wasn't the best, but what you do is you grind a groove into this bearing holder, and that gives you access to that E-clip from the side. Pops that in there. I'm sitting here struggling with this thing, trying to figure out how to get it in there. I went to look at the old one and saw that and completely forgot about it, but it all came back to me. So you can grind a groove in that bearing holder, and that allows you to actually push on that E-clip from one side and pop it on there. It is possible to do it without doing that, at least with today's E-clips, because I don't think they're as hard as the old ones. But I also had to use a pair of snap ring pliers with very sharp tips to get on there and do it. So anyway, if you're having trouble getting that on there, go ahead and grind you a groove in there, get you sideways access to that E-clip. Anyway, I thought that was kind of funny since that came blasting back from the past. Alright, let's build some rear suspension. Just cutting off the flashing off of these arms. They bind a little bit when they move, so that should free them up just a little. So next going to be installing the rear hubs. Calls for bushings. Won't be using those. Have these nice Boca bearings. Going to install those instead. Okay, so this step they call for a roll pin to go through the end of this frickin' axle, and I'm not going to lie to you, it's a giant pain in the ass trying to get it on there. So I'm just going to wait until this is actually mounted on the car, because the whole time you're trying to push that roll pin in, this hub is rolling around and it's just fighting you every step of the way. So I'm going to wait till this is mounted on the car. When it's holding it for me, then I'll use some pliers to press that roll pin through. Alright, and into bag F, definitely my least favorite part of any build, turnbuckles. Alright, so there's that one. Calipers, it's supposed to be, the gap between the ball ends is 14.2 millimeters. And 14.21.24. Close enough for me. This will be the only one I film, so. Alright, so car nears completion. Front suspension's all done, rear suspension is done. Next step is to build some shocks. So I always have to give my fingers a break in between these because they I always end up with sore fingers from building shocks. So this is another place where the re-release kit differs entirely from the original. This uses the Associated's modern style top-loading shock. On the old one, they actually loaded from the bottom. There was a C-clip that held it in there. It was a lot bigger pain in the ass to deal with. So this looks identical to the other one, but of course, unless you look at it from that angle. So that will be different from the old one. And I don't have an old one to show you. Unfortunately, I don't have those shocks within easy reach. So anyway, this should be just like building a modern shock with a retro look. Alright, well, I'm about to wrap up on my shocks here, and unfortunately the manual says you're supposed to put two spacers, or shock downstops, 6466s. Those appear to have been shorted. I can't find them anywhere. They did not with all the contents of the bag. Luckily, I have a Associated shock rebuild kit laying here, so it will have all of the spacers that I need, but kind of a bummer. First thing that's really gone wrong in this whole kit. I was surprised to see those missing. Let's get these buttoned up and we'll finish up the shocks here. Alright, so I'm going to add eyelets to the shock shaft here. A lot of you guys, if you're old school like me, probably already know this, but you want to grip the shaft as low as possible with a pair of pliers so you do not mar that. You don't want that marred metal going up into the shock cartridge and tearing things up. So you need to grip the shock shaft as low as possible, and then that way the lower retaining cup will cover it up and make sure it doesn't do any damage. Good old-fashioned clamp style shock collars. Install a spring and the lower retainer. And voila, perfect vintage reproduction shock. Alright, front shock's mounted up. Time to move on to the rear. And probably the most iconic part, at least the part I remember the best. That pretty well completes the roller. Got to build some wheels and tires, and it'll actually be a rolling chassis. Alright, and there it is. I didn't get any footage of mounting up tires, but there's the roller. Pretty pumped about getting this thing going. So that's it for this episode. Next time we're going to cover painting up the body and gotta paint the driver and all that fun stuff. So this episode's already getting pretty long. So we'll see you in episode 4.